Welcome everyone to the Department of Theatre at the Faculty of Fine Arts at the University of Victoria's Orion Series. My name is Patrick Dewars. I'm an assistant professor of performance design in our department. And I'm delighted today to be able to speak with Soheil Parsa, an absolutely fabulous director based in Toronto. But before we go ahead, it's of course critical to remember where we do our work at the University of Victoria. And with that in mind, we acknowledge and respect the Lekwungen peoples on whose traditional territory the university stands, and the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Wasanich people whose historical relationship with the land continues to this day. I'm just delighted to have Soheil Parsa with us today. Soheil has been working in Toronto for a number of decades, originally from Iran, and he is here to speak to you today about all kinds of things, but I imagine particularly about his directing practice. So Soheil, we'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Patrick, for the introduction. First of all, I would like to thank the Faculty of Fine Arts and Theatre Department at Victoria University for inviting me to share some of my thoughts and experiences as a theatre director with their students. I'm truly grateful for the opportunity. I begin with a bit of my personal history. I'm originally from Iran, as Patrick said. I studied theater in that country. I was in my final year at the theater school at Tehran University in 1979 when the Islamic Revolution happened. I was expelled from university and forbidden to do theater because I did not support the Islamic Revolution and its fundamentalist ideology. The other reason for my expulsion from university was my family's religion and my religious background, which is the Baha'i faith. Baha'i is a non-Islamic religion. Members of this religious minority have been subject to severe and systematic persecution since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. It was 3 years after the revolution in 1982. I fled my homeland through desert and mountains. I made my way to Canada via Pakistan, the United Arab Emirates, and India, and arrived in Toronto with my wife and one-year-old son in March 1984, exactly 37 years ago. It was March 23rd. I remember the date exactly. When I came to Canada, I barely spoke English. In 1985, a year after I arrived in Canada, I enrolled in the theater department at York University. Although I was an actor by training, acting now seemed unlikely for me, given my new challenge of speaking a second language. So I gravitated towards directing. I, however, did not take any directing courses at York. After the first year, I enrolled in the theater studies. Upon my graduation in 1989, I co-founded Modern Time Stage Company with a fellow graduate and friend, Peter Farbridge, of the British Heritage. This combination of partnership between an Iranian-born theater director or theater artist and an actor of the British heritage was a strange and mystifying to many people in the community in those days. For me, it was not about identity politics. I didn't have this agenda of finding another Middle Eastern artist or another immigrant to form a company with. I was searching for human connection, and that connection happened very organically between Peter and me. Um, when we decided to found a company together, we rarely talk about our cultural differences. It was not an issue at all, uh, because it was all about the work. Our conversation were mostly about theater, and talking about Brecht, Chekhov, Shakespeare, and also different styles of theater. From the very beginning, we were interested in the work. Uh, the central motivation for forming a theater company came from recognizing that there would be little or no possibility for me as a racialized immigrant artist to be hired as a director by Canadian theaters. As a matter of fact, without modern times, I would have not been able to direct a single show in this country. Um, it was a different time. The climate of the performing arts industry was very different in those days. In the late 80s, there were no theater companies led by artists from diverse cultural backgrounds. In those days, the appearance of a theater artist from Iran was unheard of. It was a strange phenomenon. I can say with certainty I was the first Middle Eastern immigrant who enrolled in theater program in Canada. Um, the York administration, frankly, didn't know how to treat me or deal with me. Um, those 4 years at York was a very challenging and painful period for me. Um, I had heard some disheartening comments from some of the teachers in the theater department regarding my potential as an immigrant to be able to do theater in Canada. Um, I had been told over and over there would be no opportunity for me as a theater artist in this country. Nonetheless, I had a thick skin and I survived those 4 years. Um, in the first 10 years of the company, from 1989 to 1999, I normally work in two jobs outside of modern times to contribute to my family's need, delivering pizza, a newspaper, and driving school bus. Um, uh, I was frequently running between the rehearsal hall and other commitments to make a living. Peter and I worked for many years to establish an initial funding base for the company. It was 13 years after funding Modern Times in 2002. We received our first small salaries as administrators of the company. About the theatrical background, at the time of the company's formation, I already had a background and understanding of a European, Eastern and European theater, and needed a forum to express it and develop it into a personal voice. Um, for many years, unfortunately, many professionals in the theater community had labeled my work as multicultural or Iranian theater. I've had many influences, as most artists do. My Iranian theatrical tradition is one of them, which I'm very proud of. But many other theatrical traditions have hugely influenced me. That's why I've always said that I don't want to be considered as an Iranian theater director or even an Iranian Canadian theater director. I'm simply a director, a theater director with a relatively good knowledge of Western and Eastern theater. I've done a lot of research as an artist. I've investigated different form and traditions of theater, including Western avant-garde, European, North American, Japanese, Persian, to find my own vocabulary, to find my own voice. as a theater practitioner, as an artist. My theater training at Tehran University exposed me to theater directors such as Stanislavski, Meyerhold, Gortovsky, Antoine Artaud, Edward Gordon Craig, and Peter Brook, and some remarkable Iranian playwrights, directors such as Bahram Beyzai, who I admire and have translated and directed 5 of his plays in Canada. Through all this, I have tried not to imitate these artists, but to be influenced by them. I've confronted those theatrical traditions that I studied and used them as a springboard to create my own theater, my own theatrical vocabulary, something new and different. Regarding labeling the work of racialized artists like mine as multicultural or not being, sorry, just I have to, sorry about this. Yes, about like labeling my work as multicultural or not being real Canadian theater. Some positive things has been changing in the industry in the in the recent years. However, more than 2 decades, I had to constantly hear and deal with this unfair categorization of my work. It was really difficult not to hear the undertone of condescension and an attempt to push the theater real value safely behind a label of foreignness. My point is this kind of reductionist division based solely on an artist's cultural background and ethnicity prevent our theater community, as a matter of fact, from fully exploring and benefiting the richness of the theatrical culture we present in Canada. As I said, positive changes have been happening. So fingers crossed that we witness more changes in the good changes in the future. For the following section, I've borrowed a lot from Modern Times Planning and Organizational Profile, written, developed by Peter Farbridge and myself. So I want to acknowledge Peter's important contribution here. The company's creative vision has been shaped mainly by myself as the company's artistic director, who has directed all company's production in the past 31 years. My experience as a political refugee in Canada has been the most significant ingredients in company's artistic vision. I suffered from abuse of disempowerment as a young man in post-revolutionary Iran. I was separated from my cultural roots, from my mother tongue, and my social status when I escaped Iran and came to Canada. That's why my work at Modern Times has been focused on giving a voice to disempowered. Modern Times mandate has developed over the years. Artistically and organizationally, Modern Times is committed to being mutually respectful, a culturally inclusive collaboration dedicated to humanist principle, producing evocative, emotional, and visceral theater production that embraces a global view and transcends narrow ideologies and cultural expectations. We are searching for new original form and creation and expression and exploring and taking inspiration from the uniqueness, communality, and differences of human experience. At Modern Times, we are interested in how the world's art associate us as human race, as opposed to a system of unconnected cultures. We create original plays, revisit classical work, and translate and produce Iranian plays. The company has produced an average one show every season and has done co-production with artists from other countries such as Bosnia, Colombia, Cuba, and Denmark. Um, we believe that individual voices, experience, and backgrounds can unite in a common vision to create theater that expresses the essence of a shared human spirit. We believe that human identity is multi-layered. So our theatrical aesthetics draws from many different styles and traditions. Within this diversity, we seek beauty in simplicity and truth in vulnerability. Um, we oppose the presumption that people can be uniquely categorized based solely on their religion or culture. We seek to demonstrate the multiplicity of human spirit in our work. In most of our productions, we have challenged the illusion of a unique, singular, and choiceless identity. Uh, we are not against identity. We are aware that it can be source of pride, joy, strength, and confidence. And yet, we recognize that identity can cause destruction and death. We continue to see violence associated with identity conflicts repeating itself around the world and taking the lives of millions. Just take a look at the 20th century. We had at least like four major genocides, in my opinion, all of them in a way or somehow has been connected with the identity conflicts. We are attracted to the universal and mythic themes, the focus being more philosophical than social political. Most of our plays, because of their philosophical roots, we believe have been deeply political, but their political aspects is always historical. Ultimately, the company's message is one of humanism. Uh, my own experience with religion and political ideology in Iran has given me a sense that there is not one single truth in the world. At modern times, we are interested in stories, symbols, and signs that are common to all human beings. Um, when we assemble culturally diverse cast, we are simply acknowledging the existence of a globalized world, which is the hallmark of our generation. We do not spotlight the cultural specificity of our actors with whom we collaborate. A culturally diverse member of the cast in our work is not representing her, his race, or culture on the stage. Instead, he represent her, his unique individuality as an artist and human being in our productions. We are not emphasizing the predominance of different cultural identities in the world, but are simply saying that this it's in ensemble is the human race that we present, which is both beautiful and vulnerable. That's why we do not hesitate to work with actors who are audible, visible minorities, audible or visible minorities. In our productions, for example, a Romanian actor can play the Bade in The Lesson by Eugen Ionesco. An Asian man can play Lucky in Waiting for Godot. A Quebecois woman can play Lady Macbeth. Vulnerability is an important concept for us. Peter and I have spoken extensively about it. We believe that human beings in touch with their vulnerability are in general capable of more human empathy and therefore less violence. Um, my experience with ideology in Iran, my dislocation as an immigrant in Canada, and the vulnerability that came out of this experience has have provided me perhaps with a better understanding of human struggle and human nature. Uh, this interest in vulnerability is why the actor has always been central to modern times work. We believe that the actor is the most immediate source of vulnerability in theater because the actor is the audience point of view, point of reference for what we feel. It's through the actor that the audience identifies with the theme of the work. Our best memories of actors are the ones who showed the most vulnerability and who could transfer that vulnerability onto the stage. Peter and I have tried to create a theater company where vulnerability is possible, where everyone is encouraged to risk something about themselves, where everyone can feel safely embarrassed by failure from time to time. Uh, this perhaps is our definition of humanism, that human being can find a greater potential for authentic strength through communicating with their weaknesses. Uh, as a theater director and creator, if I lose that sense of vulnerability in a creative process, I feel that I'm not genuinely creating. I become a boss. I become a boss who knows everything and moves actors around like pawns. There would be no room for me, like, if I lose that sense of vulnerability, there would be no room for surprise and discoveries. Um, that sense of not knowing is usually terrifying, but in my opinion, fundamental to the genuine artistic creation. Sometimes you have to put yourself in a place of not knowing. As a director, you don't need to know everything before you enter the rehearsals. Um, in terms of the theme of most of our production, timeless, the theme of loneliness, the themes of loneliness, the mystery of existence, the search for happiness and truth, and the conflict between fate and will are often at the center of modern times work. The productions are usually placeless and timeless. I'll elaborate on this more on this concepts later. Um, Design elements are ultimately more like archetypes and less realistic. Archetype, in our opinion, transcends cultural and political borders, and this is what the company strives for in its creation, to move away from ideology towards human vocabulary and speak across the civilization, or cultural vocabulary that speaks across the civilization. We explore theater through international lens, often with the desire to challenge historical cycle of war and violence. Uh, Witnessing a bloody revolution and experiencing an ideological fundamentalist regime have had a profound impact on my political and philosophical view as a theater artist, and raised many fundamental questions. Questions such as, does a person need one exclusive identity? Why we are passionately attached to our birthplace, ethnicities, religion, or national identities, even if we have inherited and not chosen them. What makes someone your enemy? What does it mean to fight for or die for one's religion or political ideologies? These questions have fascinated us over 3 decades and inspired much of modern times work. like productions, plays about ideologies like being consistent in modern times history. For example, the production of two of UNESCO's play, the Chairs and the Lesson, which is all, in my opinion, strongly associated with ideology. I had a production of Jean Genet's The Balcony, which is about the revolution. Peter and I have written a play called Hallaj. It was about a Sufi master who, and it was like associated again with the concept of ideology. Being an immigrant, people usually expect that I would create something about the immigrant or refugee experiences. I've been asked why I don't create shows about my immigrant identity. Um, I believe this is an important subject matter. I respect the theater artists who choose to create shows about their refugee and immigrant experiences. But however, this has not been the sole feeding necessity or priority for me as an artist. I may do it one day in the future if it's necessary, but it hasn't been my priority. I have never had the urge or desire to direct a play about my refugee experience. The company's theatrical aesthetics is driven by myself and has evolved as my artistry has evolved. I began as a director by looking at the different theatrical style, some Eastern, some Western. Just like, yeah, let's stop my thought. That's right. Sorry. Exploring them in the context of the play. The first period of modern times artistic life from 1989 to 1997 could be characterized as more exploratory. Eventually, my exploration has evolved in my own intuitive response to the material at hand. I allow the play or the theme to inform my creative imagination, which is open to many theatrical style. Since I'm open to any theater style, as long as it's necessary to the production at hand, our productions varies considerably in how they look. Waiting for Godot was very different from Hamlet. The Cherry Orchard was nothing like Macbeth. This inconsistency is exciting us, and for us as artists and for our audience as well. My my exploration of stylized theatrical form, along with my investigation of Eastern and Western theater, has blossomed into my intuitive vocabulary. Uh, I use the vocabulary to challenge the different plays I work on, from contemporary Persian work in translation to the work of absurdist playwright in new Canadian work devised with the company or written by commissioned playwrights. Um, aesthetically, I do a lot with little. As many critics have said, modern times productions allow the audience to fill in the blanks. Um, in the age of like elaborate mega musical and theater that is offering up complex media experiences, we believe that it's rare to this is rare what we do and needs to be protected. In our production, set is usually minimal and very simple. Sound and light are two major design elements in my productions. They're the essential storytellers in my stage. I usually, when I have a cast of five, my first introduction in the first day of the rehearsal, I say, okay, we have five actors, five characters. They play five different characters, but we are missing two other actors, characters in the piece they're not here yet, and that's lighting and sound design. So they're the designer. They're so essential to my production and my creation. As a director, I try not to just present reality, but to evoke reality. That's why stylistically my work goes beyond realism and naturalism. In the rehearsal hall, we look for joy and freedom. We recognize a lateral, open-minded. We encourage a lateral, open-minded rehearsal process to empower the members of the creative team. We encourage them to give their points and views and participate and contribute and draw deeply from within their own personal resources. Here, I would like to share what Rick Knowles, a prominent Canadian theatre scholar and dramaturg, had said about my working process. Rick has written extensively about modern times and acted as dramaturg in a few of company's production. He says, Soheil Pars makes audience see the world differently. He quite consciously works with diverse actors and creative teams whose traditions, assumptions, and instincts diverge from one another's. And he lets each of us to do our work, unlike many directors, especially dominant culture directors, working with folks from other cultures. He let us bring our whole selves into the process. He continues that I've never seen Soheil tell people what to do. He watches, listens, pays attention, thinks, and make complex and often surprising choices that come from the energy of the room, that come from the energy and the people in the room. Thanks to Rick, that was a compliment really means a lot when Rick talks about my work and the way I do things, the way I do theater. I appreciate that. So for me, every physical action on a stage must come from an organic place. The impulse for gestural work must come from the actors themselves. I have a fascination for classics. I kind of grew up with the classics. As a young theater student at Tehran University, I had studied the work of the prominent Western playwrights, and I have directed plays by Shakespeare, Chekhov, Lorca, Beckett, UNESCO, and Jean Genet for modern times. Being somewhat removed from contemporary temporal limitation, I believe classics allows the most freedom for us as artists. I think that the cultural layers of the classics in most cases have already been stripped away throughout the decades and centuries and have become the timeless manifestation of human experience. That's why they have survived and been vastly translated and produced in different languages and countries. In a way, the archetypal quality that I'm looking for are already inside the classical plays. It's a matter of finding them. As a theater director, I take a more sculptural approach to classical plays or all of the productions I do. The task of the sculptor is to discover the statue inside of a block of stone. The process involves eliminating all that is unnecessary that prevents the revealing of the statue or the essence. That's why I attempt to discover and liberate the archetypal qualities and the timeless human experience that already exists in the classical plays. Sometimes I succeed and sometimes I don't, but I make the attempt. For example, I'll give you an example about what I said. When I was preparing myself to direct Lorca's Blood Wedding in 2015, I realized that the play was beyond cultural specificity after 80 years. I find the characters I found the characters archetypal being who represent the very essence of human struggle, hope, and failure. So what I did in my production, I accentuated the timelessness and placelessness of the event. It was not taking place in any specific culture. It was, yeah, kind of with this. I think I managed to get closer to the essence of the play. I stripped down the scenic elements, the props and costumes from the original Spanish culture. Uh, the play could happen in any country or any culture around the world. Um, I didn't challenge the story or the themes of the play, but I opened it up for the audience to see it from a different angle than looking at just a Spanish play. The production simply went beyond the cultural and geographical barriers or borders. Um, Moreover, by making the production a timeless and placeless human experience, the whole concept of diversity and inclusion came so naturally, so organically to the casting process or the casting of the show. The fact that the show's event wasn't taking place in any specific culture or any specific country helped me diversify my cast. We had actors from 7 different ethnic backgrounds on the stage. Actors from different races and ethnicities played the parts of the mother and the son. The mother was of a Colombian heritage, and the son was a Chinese heritage, and this did not matter to the audience. Some of the audience members told us that after a few minutes, the show started, everything seemed so natural. They never questioned the different uh, ethnicity of the mother and son. Uh, they simply, I believe, engaged with the story and the staging of the show. It was interesting. I experienced the same when I saw Peter Brook's Hamlet in 2003 in Paris. It was fascinating. Hamlet was black, Gertrude was white, Claudius was black, Polonius played by an actor of Japanese, heritage, while his daughter Ophelia was a white European actor. It was amazing. Same thing. Like after like 2 3 minutes, I didn't care. It didn't matter to me. Uh, that being non-realistic, so to speak. That yeah, like the father could be Japanese and the daughter could be a European of a European heritage. It has been a real privilege to work in Toronto and have access to a huge pool of amazing actors, designers, and artists from different cultural backgrounds, many of them who have profoundly contributed to our creation or creations. The company has recently created a new project called Post Marginal, which emphasizes cultural diversity as theater practice or theatrical practice. The project is led by co-artistic director Peter Farbridge, is a theater laboratory and symposium for theater participation based on companies' work with culturally diverse practices. We think that it's possible to see cultural diversity in terms of the political and social identities and as a source of creative inspiration through different physical and emotional characteristic of performance of the performers. Um, Leading an independent theater company for more than 3 decades hasn't been an easy task. It has required a great deal of commitment, dedication, and sacrifices. Nonetheless, we are immensely proud of what we have done and our contribution to Canadian theater in the past 31 years. Um, through leading by example, Modern Times has successfully influenced generation of diverse theater practitioners in this country, and will hopefully continue to do so. Artists such as Ravi Jain from Why Not Theatre, Beatrice Pisano from Aluna Theatre, Majdi Matar from Empty Space in Kitchener have all said that when they began working as artists in Canada, Modern Times success helped them to believe that it was possible for them to find their own place in Canadian theatre as new immigrants. Um, uh, Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to me. I stop my long monologue here and look forward to have a dialogue with some of your listeners. Thank you so much.
In the Q&A dialogue box. I've got a question here from Will Wiegler. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Will. And he says, I directed a very theatrical staged reading of your
Orish,
yes, with Fuente Theatre Society here in Victoria a little over 10 years ago. We not only had an intercultural ensemble, we also challenged gender casting. Orash was played by emerging Canadian film and television star Emily Pigford, who is of Japanese and British heritage, while she was still a student at UVic. The moment when Orash makes the decision to take on the enormous challenge, despite an overwhelming feeling that they are not up to the task, but knowing it must be done. It felt especially global and relevant for us today. Thank you for this play. So I guess there's not a question, but just a shout out, which is fantastic.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, just like briefly, that play Arish was translated, adapted by myself and Brian Court, Canadian playwrights and dramaturge, amazing, amazing artists. And after that, a production in Toronto, the play was translated into Spanish and Serbo-Croat language later on. So, and it's performed in Cuba with the Cuban cast, in Colombia with the Colombian cast, and in Bosnia with the Bosnian actors. So yeah, that show Arish has traveled around the world, and it's such a beautiful, like a mythic play. Yes, about like human experience again. Yeah.
Will goes on to say we opened with a telling of the traditional story in Farsi. So. That's great. Thanks, Will, for those comments. I'll just add that since we're waiting for more questions, the way that you and I had the pleasure of meeting is through this initiative at the Stratford Festival, where they invited, as this sort of big institution. Someone, I don't know who it was, realized that there were directors out there who were not working in the sort of way that they were as an institution accustomed to working and accustomed to supporting the director. And you were one of two directors from Canada who were invited to this laboratory. I got to tag along because I work with the other director quite regularly, but it was one of those great things where they gave us a house to share, and we got to have those long conversations over pasta in the kitchen after our separate days of rehearsal. So can you tell me a little bit about what was your perception of what was Stratford seeing or curious about in terms of your process that they thought that they needed to understand better?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
That was the reason they approached me. That's what they told me. We like what you do. This is interesting. What you do is really different, because they knew that I had directed Hamlet and Macbeth from the classical genre. And then they said, would you be able to come and lead a 2 weeks of workshop that called the Director's Lab, But I knew that would be just basically a workshop. I wasn't expecting that they would hire me to do a full production. I knew it would be impossible because, yeah, like I know what is happening in the Stratford, and I knew that what I was trying to do wouldn't be really, fitting their mandate in that sense. But I still appreciated that I had that opportunity to share some of my work with some of the actors and explore freely in 2 weeks in that environment. So we were given. I was like they proposed Midsummer Night's Dream as a project that they could work on. So I had like 6 actors. We it was interesting. We challenged as always I do, confronted that beautiful play and tried to explore new things. And we had like a couple of workshop presentation, and somehow that ended there.
Right.
And as I said, I wasn't expecting there's gonna.
Oh, I think I'm afraid we've Soheil, you've frozen up a little bit on me. I'm not sure if it's my connection or yours. Okay, so oh, you're back, Soheil. Okay, you froze on us for a few minutes
You
there.
too, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I lost you, yeah.
I was on a meeting this morning where we were planning a live, major live gathering of human beings in 2 years, and I cannot wait for us to be able to be together again in person. And I can certainly say we wish you could come to UVic and be with us for this talk in person today. But we have had a few more questions pop up in the chat. So we've got a question from Babak Baharastan, and they say, I had a privilege to join your workshop 2 times as a member of the Iranian community. That was a great experience for me. Do you have any plans in the future to direct some kind of classical work like Hamlet, Shakespeare, or Hamlet, King Lear? And they go on to clarify, they meant like Shakespearean classical works. Are you looking at working in Shakespeare anymore in the future?
Not at the moment. Not at the moment. Look, I love Shakespeare. Like one of the plays that I'm so fascinated. I would love to do it one day, but I doubt it's gonna happen. It's gonna be is the Tempest. I love that play. But no, for immediate future, no, I don't have any plan to direct Shakespeare unless the opportunity comes and some possibilities. Yeah. But
Okay.
for modern times, no, I don't have that plan.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Soheil. We have another question from Jacques Lemay, who asks, what does your first day of rehearsal look like? And what is your take or philosophy on table work?
The first day of work is the most frightening day for me as a director. Really, that's again, I spoke about the vulnerability. That's a day that it's a lot of pressure, on my shoulders as a theater director. And when I see the room full of actors waiting for me to lead them, it's a very frightening experience. But the first, it depends to the nature of the project. Some projects requires play reading, yeah, just a read through at the top. Some of other projects, it requires start with the physical action. Depends. If it's a device creation, it of course is different. I start like with physical action, some improvisation maybe. It depends, to the nature of the work and what we do. It differs. Yeah, sometimes it's absolutely necessary. When I directed the Cherry Orchard 2 years ago, it was essential for me to spend at least 1 week of table work, just like read and make sure that everybody is on the same page, and we understand, we understood the concept. But so, as I said, yeah, it changes, depends on the nature of each project, each
Mm.
play that you do. Um, but yeah, don't, the first day is terrifying.
I think thank you for that answer, Soheil. What I love, one of the things that you said, well, you said lots of things that were really inspiring and uplifting. So I've got a whole page of notes here that I'm looking at. But one of the things that you said that I thought was really interesting is that you can't, or you don't look back on your work and see it looking the same, that that productions can look completely different from each other, or sort of have it's not necessarily, when you say look, I'm sure you didn't mean the visual necessarily, but the feeling of the production or the approach to the productions can be completely different, and yet it's still your work as the director. And I find that really inspiring, and your root in, you're sort of curious about the form of theater. It seems to me you're curious about exploring what theater is over any kind of individual preoccupation. Is that right? Am I?
That's interesting. Yeah, I would say so. I would say, yeah, like, it, the form is important for me. Like, again, a different, both form and content for me,
Right.
like in the same place for me.
Right.
If we don't have like a good form, the content get lost. That's
Right.
why I always say, like, the vehicle is theater, and what is my theatrical vocabulary? The main thing for me as a director, I want to make sure that my audience don't get bored. And
Right.
that's my main intention. When I lose, sometimes when I do a production, I say to the cast, say, guys, at the end, if we are just doing the production and people start, checking the time, it's a failure. Like, I'm
Yes.
exaggerating. I said, no, that we are responsible to engage the audience moment by moment. Uh, if you have important things to say, but again, like, I'm not talking about message, because I don't believe like we as artists have message for humanity, because we are not politicians or
Yeah.
religious leaders. We
Yeah.
don't have a prescription for humanity. But if you have something important to say, if you want to protest against the current situation of the world or whatever, you have to find that theatrical language, the proper form to communicate that.
Right.
Otherwise, it becomes an intellectual, like, sometimes I say, go in and read, like an article, or just have a lecture about whatever you want to talk to about
Yeah.
why you do theater. So when we do theater, the form is really important to me.
Yeah. I always say to my students, and I'm in a way I'm joking and I'm using a metaphor when I say this, but any show without a disco ball is just a lecture.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so we've got a couple more questions popping up. We've got Michael Elliott, who's my colleague and specializes in voice in the department. So he says, thank you for sharing your journey with us, Soheil, and your thoughts about theater. You said something like, you believe the classics offer the greatest possibility or flexibility for us as theater artists. And he's asking, did he hear this accurately? Could you elaborate on why you think these works offer the greatest possibility, or the way in which classic plays may have universal appeal?
And I think this, as I said, the classic has been stripped away, from this cultural specificity. In my opinion, it's not a state, it's not a statement. This is my perception of it, and become, as I said, become a manifestation of of the human spirit, of humanity. And I think that's why there is no, for me, there is no time attached to it. It becomes timeless. That's like, it's not just on the slogan. When I look at, like, Chekhov, it's like, yeah, it's a very, like, a timeless, like, manifestation of what is happening right now. And I think that's what I mean by it. It opens it up. It's a lot of possibilities, and that's why, for me as a director, when I just deal with with the classical play, with like, for example, when I do Chekhov or when I did Lorca, I'm not worried about it that I have to go and just do it in a Spanish way. Now, if you want to do Chekhov, you have to do it in a Russian way. I think that's a place that the Russianness, that Spanishness of this play is going to go away. And I think for me, or at least that's the way I look at it, it's gone. And that's why it becomes about us. It becomes about human experience, then being just about cultural experience of Russian or people in Spain. So that's what I mean. It gives you more freedom, I think. For me, at least for me, I'm not speaking for everyone else, for everybody. I'm just speaking about like my own experience. Give me such a big freedom to really dig into that archetypal quality that, as I said already, exists in these plays, and that's my job to go and find them and just bring them up. That's why, like, I just sort of the example I said about like when I saw Hamlet's Peter Brook's Hamlet. That's what I meant by it. Like, it wasn't associated with any culture. It wasn't that happening, of course, in Denmark anymore, and like all these like actors, different nationalities on stage. Wow, just like give like a deeper understanding to the concept, to the essence of the play of Shakespeare, with that great adaptation of Maestro Peter Brook. So that's what I meant. I hope I've explained myself
Yeah.
a bit. Yeah,
Th-
that is a great question.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask. We barely have time for one more question, but I'm gonna try and squeeze it in here. This comes from an anonymous attendee, and they say you mentioned vulnerability as an essential quality for actors. What are some of the other qualities that are important to you in creating an ensemble of actors?
Yeah, vulnerability. Bringing things from themselves, from who they are. I'm hesitant to say bring something from your culture. No, I don't want to just do it that way. Just as I said, when we respect actors as individuals, as their individuality as human beings, vulnerability one is like as our listeners mentioned. The other one definitely bring things from your own experience, who you are. If you are like yeah, exactly, like I was just talking to a good actor, like said, like you're gay. I want to bring, just like feel free, just bring what you feel, and you are allowed to bring it to this rehearsal hall. Let's explore, let's find things about ourselves, discover things about ourselves in the rehearsal process. So yeah, I ask, like, to be generous. Being vulnerable, there's to be generous. Contribute
Yeah.
as much as you can. Again, depends to the director. Some of the directors like may not be open to this, but again, personally, for me as a director, I ask for the contribution of I would like to give the actors a sense of ownership. That's my philosophy in the rehearsal. If they have a sense of ownership, they feel great about the work. They feel great about the contribution of their own contribution, and eventually makes a huge difference when the actors have a sense of ownership of the project that they're doing.
I think that's a great way to flesh that out. So when you were speaking about vulnerability in particular, it occurred to me that requires a fearlessness, and you sort of alluded to that too. That it requires a willingness to look stupid, to make mistakes in front of other people, to be corrected, to all of these, sort of just this fearlessness in order to be vulnerable. And
I think it's kind of like start with the leader, or so to speak, the director in the room.
Right.
I do it. I just do it myself. Like I get excited and propose something, and after 2 minutes, guys say, "Guys, that was stupid. Forget about it." I just acknowledge it. I'm not hiding myself behind a strong mask that I know everything. I just said, "Guys, it didn't work. Sorry. Let's try something new." And I think that's it. I've never been been scared of doing this. I've
Right.
never been afraid of doing this. And I just love it. Yeah.
Well, we're just about at time. Well, we are at time, so we will leave it there. And Soheil, I'm so grateful you were able to join us today. Thank you. And I hope I get to see you again soon, and I hope we get to see you at the university sometime.
And hopefully we're gonna collaborate.
That's
one day
true.
together.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the call, Soheil.
Likewise, I'm waiting for a call from you. So
Okay.
but thank you so much. Thank you again for everything to the University of Victoria, the theater department, the fine arts, faculty of fine arts. Thanks again for this opportunity.
All right.
All the best.
Take care. Goodbye, everyone.